Shuklam Bharadaram Vishnum Shashivarnam Chaturbhujam Prasanavadhanam Dhyayet Sarva Vignopashantaye Gurur Brahma Gurur Vishnur Gurur Devo Maheshwaraha Gurur Sakshat Parabrahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Oh, actually, I just noticed that I did not post it in the forum, so looks like somebody is looking for links. Okay. Thanks to Bhaskar ji.
State the
Thank you
link.
for posting it. Thank you. Completely forgot about
Udaya
that.
Guru. Namaskaram.
And probably we should do for Lalita Sahasram as well. Bhaskar ji, can I please ask you to do that?
Sure, Guruji. I'll do it right away.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. I completely forgot. Okay, so we'll get started. So we'll go through Vayu Vahanaha one more time, and then we'll move to the next namas. Vayu Vahanaha, the one who makes the Vayus blow. So there are three different places where we get this nama. No, two different places. This one and 856. There is one more, but we'll talk about both meanings here. And then when we go to that time, like when we are doing 856, we'll also talk about this nama. So he's the one who makes Vayu blow or Vayu flow through. And the other is he rides the Vayu, is what it says. So the Puranas say that Vayu is of 7 types and for different regions. So Swamiji is explaining that, and then the atmosphere, the stratosphere, and all of the troposphere, etc. And in so there are 7. The 7 are Avaha. So there are 7 in the Puranas. So I don't know if we need to go into that kind of a detail, but what it is, unless everybody is interested in knowing those specific names and are going to use it in a way. So I'll just briefly mention it if you want to note it. It's in my notes, but I personally did not ever use it, so I'm not even familiar with these names now after these many years. Avaha is between earth and the clouds. Pravaha is between clouds and sun. Udvaha is between sun and moon. Samvaha between moon and the stars. Vivaha between the stars and the planets. And Paravaha between the planets and the Saptarishi Mandalam. And Parivaha between Saptarishi Mandala and Dhruva Nakshatra is how there are 7 types of Vayus that are defined in the Puranas. So it is Ishvara alone who makes the Vayu blow, move within their spheres and maintain their pressures, and hence he is called as Vayu Vahana. So even if we think about generally from the sense of how the air, the pressure, his vibhuti is in everything. That is the ultimate understanding, right? So without his presence or without his vibhuti, nothing can exist and nothing can sustain. And yesterday we were talking about dharma and how the laws, like the physical laws or any law that exists in the universe, is all because of Bhagavan. Nothing exists outside of his purview. So and all the fragrances, perfumes transfer to him. So if you remember when we were doing the Purva Nyasam and we do the Lam Prithivyaatmane Gandham Lam Prithivyaatmane Gandham Samarpayami Ham Akashatmane Pushpam Samarpayami. So all the 5 elements, we actually do offerings for Bhagavan through these 5 elements, because ultimately from Bhagavan came the matter energy, and in the form of the 5 elements, and everything is him. So he is the Prithvi, he is the Vayu, he is the Akasha, he is the Jala, and he is everything that exists in the universe. In that sense, he is Vayu Vahana. And he is the one who carries these fragrances from one place to the other. So he is the fragrance himself that gets carried through Vayu. Therefore, he is also Vayu Vahana. The one who blesses through Vayu is Ishvara. When we breathe, it is Bhagavan who enters us riding on Vayu. When we exhale, it is air. It is, no, we will go into at some point all the different types of Vayus within us. There are 10 Vayus. Can anyone remember, or does anyone remember what those 5 Vayus are? 5 Vayus are very used very more frequently, and there are 5 Vayus and there are 5 Upavayus. Prana, Apana, Udana, Samana, Vyana. Right? So there are 5 Vayus, and each of these, I don't know if I sent a picture of this in the past in our forum. Did we talk about this in the past? If not, I'm going to send a picture.
We talked about it, but I don't remember seeing
a picture. Okay,
a picture.
So I'll send the 5 pranas. Oh, sorry, I don't have WhatsApp on this iPad, and I'll send it. I have this right very handy, so I'll send it right after the session. So it is how air travels within us, and we are constituted, like, we are composed of the 5 elements, and how Bhagavan travels even within us, that is Vayu Vahana, and how Bhagavan carries or is carried within our body, and again related back to the Nama Hamsa, right? The inhalation and exhalation, and how Bhagavan, and we call that Ajapa, if you remember, when we were talking about that Nama. The continuous japam that we are doing of him through our breath, through our even involuntary actions are continuously as an offering to Bhagavan himself. So he is the one who carries, and he is also the one who is carried by Vayu. So that is Vayu Vahana. The next nama is one of my favorite namas, is Vasudevaha. And this appears multiple times, and even yesterday in Vishnu Sahasranamam chanting, we were talking about a particular shloka which is in the Uttara Bhaga that talks about Vasudeva, and Vasudeva has a lot of meanings. So we'll try to just distill into a few for the sake of some time. The one who is the indweller of all the bodies, and goes back to Purusha Nama. The one who lives in this Puram is Purusha. Similarly, the one who lives in the body is Vasudeva. So Vasudeva is made of 2 words, as we already know, Vasu and Deva. So Vasati, the one who lives, is Vasu. He exists in all as the Sat. He is the consciousness that we talked about. He is existent throughout. He is a substratum of the whole universe and its existence as a layer, a foundational layer that is everywhere. So he lives, he must, right? Like if that is the case, then he must be living in every location, every spot there is. There was a question by Krishna ji about Agnya Chakra, and why we would meditate Anahata and Agnya. So I'll answer that. So I apologize, I did not get a chance to respond, or actually I limited my exposure to any technology when I was doing the Navaratris. I'll respond to that. But he is everywhere. There is specific mention of in the chakras, and whenever it is Anahata Chakra or Agnya Chakra, but it doesn't mean that he is not anywhere else. So the one who lives, the Lord alone lives, exists in all as the Sat existence. The material cause exists in and pervades the effect. So going back to the one very frequently used term, the technical term in Vedanta is Abhinna Nimitta Upadana Karanam. He is the material cause, and he is also the intellectual cause behind the whole universe. And can anybody remember what is the analogy? I believe Bhavaniji did this analogy when we were doing the GTOB session.
Yes, spider.
spider. Exactly. Urna Nabhinyaya, where we talk about the spider having thought about that it wants to build a web. It doesn't require material from somewhere outside. Like, a bird builds a nest, it goes and collects grass and roots and everything, and then just builds a nest. And if we want to build a house, we collect it from somewhere else and we bring bricks and cement and mortar and then just build a house. But for a spider, it doesn't need any other material from outside. It generates the material from within itself to create its web. Similarly, Bhagavan did not need to sit down somewhere and have instruments and tools and have material from somewhere else and started making. And Shankaracharya explains it through the analogy of a carpenter who needs a space to sit, and then who needs wood from somewhere, and he needs tools, and then he needs to have the intelligence on how to make a chair. So if Bhagavan had to do it this way, then a few things must have happened. That there was space before him, there is material existence before him, there is intelligence before him, and there are tools that exist before him. But in that case, he cannot be Bhagavan. Bhagavan is the original, the first thing that ever existed, and then all the existence came into picture. In that case, it only makes sense that he is the intellectual as well as the material cause of the whole creation. So the material also was coming within him, and therefore so it says Vasuscha asau devascha iti Vasudevaha, which means that he is both the material and the efficient cause of the universe. So that is the second meaning. There are multiple other meanings. Maybe we should just look at one more. Vasayati achadayati is how it is explained. Even though he is all and all pervasive, he as though veils himself because of his yoga maya, that he is not easy to be perceived or easy to be seen, which is a difficult part. He is everywhere, but he is also not easy to grasp. So this is where we were talking about he is the immanent and transcendent. He is further away, but he is very close. So it requires, there is a darpanam that is required. The darpanam is a shastra that shows us where he is, and Guru acts as though he can teach us how to hold the darpanam, so the shastra, in a way that we'd be able to see our reflection, through which we understand Bhagavan himself, because he is living within us and around us. So it says, even though he is all and all pervasive, he veils as though everyone with his maya, so that it is not easy for us to know him. So that is Vasudeva. There are so many more meanings for this nama. So just a nama that I particularly highlight and star. Not that any other nama is any less than this, but this one specifically, there in Niruktam etymology, there are so many derivations for this that it is it's a very complex nama. Okay, with that we'll move to the next nama, Brihad Bhanuhu, the one who possesses abundant race. I thought we completed this, but that's okay. We'll do it one more time. He's the one to whom Brihantaha Bhanavaha, the abundant and great race in the form of rays of the sun, moon, and others belong. He lights up the whole universe with many suns and many moons. I don't know if it is, we need to go into a lot of detail in just understanding. He is the effulgent cause, or he is the one who enshines everything that exists. Without him, sun or moon or anything that is giving us light, Agni, Surya, or Chandra, don't even exist. And we also know, and probably in the Puranic age, people may have questioned from other religions if they're like this whole galaxy, and if you remember, they were not even believing in a heliocentric theory. They were thinking about the geocentric theory. In other books, it is written that Earth is at the center, and sun and moon go around it. But our Puranas have given multiple galaxies. They even talked about parallel universes in those days, which now science is thinking, is it even a possibility? Could there be parallel universes existing? but we already had that in our Shastras. So Bhagavan is the effulgent cause that enshines everything. So he is Brihat. Brihat means large, massive. For example, Mahabharata with more than 100,000 shlokas is called as a Brihat Grantham. So Brihat is massive. The next nama is Adi Devaha. I think very easy for us to understand. The effulgent being and cause of everything. Adi means at the starting point, beginning of everything. He is the one that was existent at the beginning of the existence, and he is the one that will continue to exist at the end of the current manifestation, and then it will re-manifest. It is only a cycle. It cannot just unexist at any given point. So he is the Adi Deva, the one being that existed. And even in Upanishads, especially Purusha Suktam, very specifically says the one and only that existed before everything started. So being self-effulgent, he is self-evident and all-knowing, and being the cause of everything. So he is also self-evident, but is he self-evident for us? Not necessarily, and that is because of his Yogamaya. The next nama is Purandaraha, the destroyer of cities. And we have seen this word Pura in both Lalita Sahasranamam and Vishnu Sahasranamam, and we try to understand it in various different angles. Pura means a city, so you can take it in a Puranic sense and use it as if it's a city. And in Lalita Sahasranamam, we've seen that city as the Shunyakapatnam, etc. So, and we also have seen the deeper esoteric meaning. Pura means nothing but this body. So he is the one who is the destroyer of all the bodies, which means because he is the time and he is the kala and he is the space, he is the desha. At the end of this unmanifestation, the whole pralaya kalam, everything becomes unmanifested because of him. And we take cycles of births and deaths as individual jivas. He is also the one that leaves this body to make this Puram deteriorate. So there is this one thing, and I'm really not very good at Puranas, so I'm going to read what's written here. It is the grace of Bhagavan that is able to destroy all the regions of confusion, the Pura, which are born out of sheer ignorance. All Puras are like the Gandharva Nagaras, cities, imagined in the clouds and born of delusion. The samsari goes to various lokas, and it is the grace of Bhagavan that gives the knowledge which in turn burns up these cities. Or the three shariras, Thula, Sukshma and Karana, that is a jiva, are the three puras. By giving us self-knowledge, he helps us to destroy them, which is the Tripura we have also seen in the past. So three meanings that we are looking at this. Now we'll go to Shloka 37, unless anybody has any comments, any thoughts that they want to share. Okay, we'll look at the next Shloka. Ashokaha, Taranaha, Taraha, Shuraha, Shaurihi, Janeshwaraha, Anukulaha, Shatavartaha, Padmi, Padmanibhekshanaha. So that's how many namas are in this shloka. So I'll chant once, and then probably anybody who wants to chant along, who would like to chant this one.
Chant, Shriji.
Okay. Some observations. So there is a visarga, ashokastaranastarah. Sorry. Tara, visarga followed by sha will add an extra sibilant. There will be an extra, so the same shiva sha extra there. And then shura shauri, there will also be an extra sibilant between shuraha and shauri. And anukula shatavarta, same rule applies there. Shatavartaf, because visarga followed by pa for a padmi, and padmanibhekshanaha is pretty straightforward. And padmanibhekshanaha, bha is a mahaprana. अशोकस्तारणस्तारः शूरः शौरिर्जनेश्वरः
अशोकस्तारणस्तारशूरः शौरिजनेश्वरः.
So notice that Shaurir Janeshwaraha, Ra Shaurihi,
Shauri.
yeah,
Shaurijanesh.
Shaurir Janeshwaraha.
Okay.
Okay, the next line. Anukulashatavartaf padmi padmani bhekshanaha.
अनुकूलः शतावर्तः पद्मी पद्मिनिभेक्षणः.
So the first Padmi is a Padmi and Padmani Bhekshanaha is the Nama. So the second Padma is Padma, not Padmi.
Padma.
Okay, so I'll chant the full shloka. Ashokastaranastarah shurah shaurirjaneshwarah anukulah shatavartah padmi padmani bhekshanah.
अशोकस्तारणस्तारशूरः शौरिर्जनेश्वरः अनुकूलः शतावर्तः पद्मी पद्मनिभेक्षणः.
Awesome. So in just note that after Shuraha there is also an extra S. So it will be Shurashauri. Otherwise, very well done. So we'll look at the namas. Ashokaha. So this one is kind of pretty straightforward. Shokaha is Shokam is sorrow. Ashokaha, the one free of sorrow. The other side of the meaning is the one who helps us come out of sorrow. So the one who elevates us out of sorrow is Ashokaha. So actually here, okay, I'm going to read in this paragraph. The Shoka stands for sixfold afflictions that we have previously seen, like Raga, Shoka, Moha, Mada, Matsarya, and all that. Shoka and Moha, sorrow and confusion that afflict the mind. So there are lots of technical terms which I will avoid. And so all these, like the Arishad Vargas, let's put this away. The Arishad Vargas that affect and afflict our minds are the cause for, and as we are going into Bhagavad Gita in a few shlokas, Bhagavan is going to talk about how one leads to the other, how Raga leads to Krodha, Krodha leads to Moha, Moha leads to Mada, Mada leads to Matsarya. So it is a sequence of events. If anybody watches air crash investigations or seconds from disaster, what are the sequence of events to get to that disaster point. If you analyze any of the situations in our lives where you are elated or you're not very happy with the situation, if you analyze, it all ties down to that you like something and you don't like something. So and even yesterday we were talking about this. Anything that we like, we try to pursue that, and we absolutely want it at any cost, and we will go to whatever extent to get that. And we get depressed if we don't get it. So Shoka is not on its own. Sorrow is not on its own. It's not an independent entity. All these Arishad Vargas start with Raga and Dvesha. So whether I like something or I dislike something. So the one, if Bhagavan has to elevate us from Shoka, then he has to help us throughout this whole sequence of things. It's not just one attribute. And in Lalita Sahasranam, we're going to see this individually as different namas. So the one who helps us get rid of Arishad Vargas as a whole, and especially he removes us from Shoka. So you can think of it as when we are all parents, and most of us are. If my child cries for something, and he is fussing about something, I either just give it to him, or if it is not good for him, I'm going to help him understand and deviate his attention from that to something else, so he doesn't have to worry about that. So when we say Bhagavan removes the shoka, doesn't necessarily mean that he is going to give us everything that we ask for. He has our better intentions in mind, and he knows more than what we are able to see in our own purview. What is in our vision is much smaller, micro, compared to what he can see and what he is observing as in the large scale. So there are two things that in this nama they say is reminds me of serenity prayer. If it is good for me, may I get it. If you think it is not good for my long-term well-being, then may you help me get out of this shoka, or get out of this raga, which is the original cause of this shoka. Get out of this so I can move on to something else. So that is the importance of this nama, and it is chanted in those specific scenarios. Okay. The next nama is Taranaha, the one who helps to cross samsara. So very important. Tarati basically means to swim. So somebody who helps us swim and get across this ocean of samsara. And reminds me of, like, Bhagavad Gita dhyana shlokas, and we won't go there. So, and the same thing is used for example, like, mantra. The meaning of the niruktam, the definition of mantra is given as mananat tarayati iti mantraha. Something that helps, like by doing mananam, it helps us cross the ocean, is mantra. Similarly, tantra. So what we have always heard with these is a simile for samsara is ocean, and it is massive. And in Bhagavad Gita dhyana shlokas, it actually talks about lots of crocodiles and lots of hurdles even within the samsara. As such, crossing an ocean is a big deal, and that ocean is also not, it's not a smooth ocean. There are, like, the whirlpools in it, there are crocodiles in it, there are all sorts of dangers in it that somebody could go down. So the one who can help us cross this ocean, that is, he is Bhagavan, and that name is Taranaha. The next nama is similar. Taraha, the one who saves from the fear of samsara. Just notice that difference. One is somebody who helps us cross, and somebody who helps us, who saves us from the fear of samsara. So there are two different definitions if anybody is interested in the Sanskrit definition, the niruktam. The first one, Taranaha, is samsara sagarat tarayati iti taranaha. Whereas here it is garbha janma jara mrityu lakshanat bhayat tarayati iti taraha. So he helps us be not fear the cycles of birth and death. So yesterday we were talking about this again as two different things. So there is the Jivan Mukti, and then there is the Videha Mukti. So while I am living in existence, what I may have the fear of is this continuous cycles of births and deaths, and he will help me not have this fear of birth and death while I'm alive, is Taraha. And once and he helps me cross to the border and gets me Videha Mukti, is Taranaha. Did that make sense? Okay, assuming it does. So here even Bhagavan is, I'm just noticing even Swamiji is saying this. The Dhyana Shloka of Gita tells us how the Pandavas were able to cross the dangerous river of the war with various personifications of adharma as the obstacles, only because Lord Keshava was their boatman. Okay, then there is another meaning to Tara. Tara also refers to Om, Pranava, which is the name of Brahman himself. It is said that the very chanting of Tara mantra, Om, uplifts one and removes the fear of samsara. in Sri Rudram also, Shiva is also called with Tara. And all of these names, as you know, we've spoken about in the past, between Sahasranamams, you take Kartikeya Sahasranamam or Ganesha Sahasranamam, any Sahasranamam, the names actually are very common. So I've done one research like long ago when I was, my husband tasked me with finding for our to be born son. I've done a lot of research in those days, just putting all the Sahasranamams in front of me and trying to find like the common. And we we do this, right? Like my mother-in-law wanted this name, and my mother wanted this other Bhagwan's name. So I was thinking like, okay, this is going to be a very long name. I'd rather find something that is common in all the Sahasram. So that was my intelligence in those days. But they're not different. So they are names and forms we attribute for and form an Ishtadevata Rupam in our minds. But the role of Bhagavan, the role of Ishvara, does not change based on what form we have taken. The next nama is Shuraha, the source
Sorry,
of
Guruji. What did you ultimately land on, Guruji?
I thought you would ask that question. My son's name is Samarth, and we have added Satya because he is the Sat. He is a representation of the truth for us.
Thank you. Can I also get a clarification of that dhyana shloka from Gita? Is it that Bhishma Drona Tada Jayadratha Jala? Is that the one?
Yes,
Okay.
that's the one.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
So we'll talk about the next nama, Shuraha, the source of all courage. So takes us back to the 10th chapter that Bhaskarji quotes very often. He is the vibhuti of everything that exists. While in Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavan talks about the vibhuti in the best. So, Prahlada in the Danavas, or Airavata among the elephants, or Rudras, Rudra among the, sorry. So he takes the best, but it is the vibhuti is not just in the best. The vibhuti is of everything that exists. He is the one that is the cause behind all of those. And actually,
So sorry, Shriji, what does vibhuti mean?
Vibhuti, he is the source. He is the one that shines through that. I think that's how I can define it, or maybe I have to Google it on, let's see what Google says. Vibhuti. Oh, it'll give me the Vibhuti as the one that we apply. But Vibhuti is he comes through, or he shines through that the nature, the attribute is nothing but him. So, for example, so he says, I am the North Pole star among all the stars. It is not that only North Pole star is Bhagavan. It is an example that he is quoting. It's only a sample size. But he shines through everything that exists. So, for example, we are currently discussing this and we are talking about knowledge. The knowledge itself is his Vibhuti. Or we think of Shivaji Maharaj as the valorous king. His valor is the Vibhuti of nothing but Vibhuti of Bhagavan. Or we could take any attribute, and Rudram actually tells us that it is not just the positive, it is also the negative attributes. Everything, whether it is positive or negative, it all is Bhagavan's Vibhuti, and it cannot be anywhere else. It cannot be anything else. Sorry, not anywhere else. It cannot be anything else. And the original source of all of these Vibhutis must have existed at the time of creation. And it cannot be something that is starting now. So anything that we use these two terms in English, discovery and invention. So discovery is something like, I discovered what existed in the past, and invention is I created something new. It works in a scientific place. Previously there was no gun and we invented a gun. Whether it serves a good purpose or not, we don't know. But in the nature, there is nothing called as invention. You have put some pieces together that already previously existed and created something, a new form gave it a new form. So, but all the things should have previously existed. Everything that exists today should have existed when the creation happened. Similarly, all knowledge should have existed then. All the vibhutis, all valor, all courage and everything, all Aishwarya should have existed at that time. So if anybody remembers the definition of Bhagavan, we have talked about that. There are 6 bhagas, right? 6-fold attributes. So in the absolute measure, he has all the Aishwarya, he has all the valor, he has all the yashas, and he has all everything. He is in the absolute measure that God dispersed, and in a particular person, there is a little more concentrated levels of a certain attribute compared to some other people. And whether it is that concentrated portion or the regular portion that everybody has, all of us have valor, but Shivaji ji is at a very different level. So no matter what, all of these vibhutis are nothing but Bhagavan himself. Did that make sense? Okay, so Shuraha, the source of all courage. He is not just the source of all courage, he is the source of everything. But here very specifically, they're talking about courage as one of the attributes. The next nama is Shaurihi, the descendant of Sura. So in his incarnation as Sri Krishna, he was born of Vasudeva, oops, my bad. He was born of Vasudeva, who was the son of Shura, also belonging to the clan of Shuras. So therefore, he is called as Shauri. Okay. Janeshwaraha is the next nama, the Lord of all beings. Jananam, Jantunam, Ishwaraha, Janeshwaraha. So, Jana doesn't necessarily mean it's only human beings. Everything that exists, all pranikoti that exists across the universe, everything for him, he is the Lord of all of those beings. And even after birth, he keeps giving karma phala, so he is the Lord of all beings, is the one additional thing that Swamiji adds to this one. The next nama is Anukulaha, thing easy for all to understand, the one who is favorable to all. Atmatvena hi sarvesham anukulaha. So this is what Adi Shankaracharya defines this as. Nahi swasmin pratikulyam swayamacharati. So everyone does what is favorable to oneself. We were talking about this recently as well, is we don't act on anything that does not give us happiness. Oh, this gives me sadness, therefore I'm going to do this. Nobody does that. Every activity that we have our own personal component in it. We are trying to derive happiness. So I think, I've posted a video in the past of Swamiji from Chinmaya Mission. Talks about, like, you ask a person why he study, he's going to school. He says, because I want to get a job. Why do you want to get a job? Because I want to earn money. And why do you want to earn money? So I can buy a house and a car and everything. Why do you want to buy a house and a car? I want a good lifestyle. Okay, why do you want a good lifestyle? And ultimately it all comes down to, because I want to be happy. And he says you can be happy now. So you can go through all of this process and assume that if you study, you will be happy. You get a better grade, you will be happy. If you get a job, you will be happy. But that happiness is going to be limited, and you'd be looking for what is the next milestone after this. After I get a job, I need a promotion, or I need to go to a better company, or I need to earn a little more, or I need to work on my savings, or I need to get married, whatever that could be. So all of these activities are in the search of happiness, and we can continuously search, or we can be happy now and enjoy a journey throughout, not expecting the destiny. So I think the way it was put in that video, is happiness is not your destination. Happiness is your co-passenger. So the one that is traveling with you on the way. So anukulahas. So we are looking for favors, and we think, Bhagavan is going to give us favors, and he is therefore favorable to all of us. But at the same time, he also does not expect any favors or does not need any favors. He is beyond all of that. So here it says, everyone does what is favorable to oneself. No one does anything unfavorable to oneself. Bhagavan is anukula, favorable to all, because he is the self of all. He does not stand against anybody because he is essentially the self and also the one who is in the form of the entire Jagat himself. So there is a nice nuance here on how Swamiji explained versus how I explained it. I don't know if it came across when I was reading it. So let's kind of take that, the philosophical point of view. So we were just talking about everybody does what is favorable to them. I do what's favorable to me. And if I am nothing but the Bhagavan that is living in me, the Atman that is living in me, then that Atman is being favorable to me. In that sense, the Atman cannot be unfavorable to anything. Did I make sense? Or shall I read this sentence one more time?
Read it once more.
I'll read that. Observe the beauty of how Swamiji worded it. Everyone does what is favorable to oneself. No one does anything unfavorable to oneself. Straightforward. Bhagavan is anukula, favorable to all, because he is the self of all. He does not stand against anybody because he is essentially the self and also the one who is in the form of the entire Jagat. If he is the self and that self is seeking favorable things, that self cannot ask for anything else, and that same self is in everybody across, so he can only be favorable, asking for favorable things for each one of us individually as a composite of everyone, the whole Jagat. The only thing he can be is anukulaha, not the unfavorable aspect cannot exist. Make sense?
Yeah, Guruji, thank you.
Okay, the next nama is Shatavartaha, the one who incarnates hundreds of times to protect dharma. So I'm assuming, like, somebody will quote the Bhagavad Gita shloka. I think our favorite shloka of the whole Bhagavad Gita, and we kind of are very hopeful that he'll remanifest.
Yes.
Yeah, yada yada hi dharmasya. So he will incarnate, and I sometimes keep thinking, like, I love any of, like, the Vagyakaras and all the songs as well. So I love the song Krishna Ni Begane Baro. So I keep singing that many a times, knowing that he doesn't have to arrive in any form. He's all around us. He is here and watching everything that's happening. But sometimes, when things bother me on news and I'm thinking, like, okay, where is this world going? And I keep singing, like, Krishna Ni Begane Baro. But he is in every, it is nothing but his incarnation that we see and we perceive on a day-to-day basis. But he takes the form. Oh yes, I forgot to post the Avatara message yesterday, Jayashriji. I'll do that. Or if somebody can find it on chat and repost it, please look for in chat, search the word Avatara. I think there is a long post. If you could repost in the forum, that'll be great. In both this forum as well as in Bhagavad Gita forum, please. So he will reincarnate and takes forms. And there is a beautiful way this is explained in Kena Upanishad. I'm trying to remember the mantra. It goes something don't quote me exactly, I'm not quoting it, but it says something like Swa Mahimyeva or Swa, because of her, and in Kenopanishad it is mother who comes to talk about, like, Bhagavan, Ishvara, with other gods. So by her own Yogamaya, Swa Yogamayeti, she takes the form and represents herself or manifests herself before the Indra and Agni and Vayu that are having a little fight on who is the more powerful. So because of his own Maya, of his own Yoga Maya, he can take an incarnation, and in that incarnation he will not, the purpose of the birth is different than why we would be born as a jiva. He is not, we are born because of karma phalas, but he is not born because of karma phalas. It is through yoga maya that he is born, and his purpose of why he is born is also very different than why we are born. We are here to extinguish our karmas, but maybe on the way we'll be collecting a lot more than what we originally intend to come here with. But his purpose is for dharmastapanam. So there are 5 differences between what an avatara is versus what a jiva regular birth is. And I won't list them all, we'll just post it in the forum. But he will take, the one who incarnates hundreds of times to protect dharma is Shatavartaha. The next nama is the one who has the lotus in his hand. Okay, Padmi. As the one who has Padma, the lotus in his hand, he is Padmi. The lotus in his hand signifies the 6 bhagas. We were just talking about these. They are in the absolute measure, like everything that exists in the universe, all of Aishwaryam, all of Dharma, all Yashas, all Shri, all Jnana, and all Vairagya. What do they mean? Aishwarya is overlordship on everything. Dharma, we all know, there is no translation for dharma. Yashas is glory or fame. Shri is wealth. Jnana is knowledge. Vairagya is dispassion. This in absolute measure are the 6 bhagas, 6 wealths or 6 attributes of Bhagavan, and this Padmam signifies that. The next nama is Padmanibhekshanaha. So this is for Upasana, is what Swamiji says. The Lord, one whose Ikshana eyes are Padmanibha, like the lotus, that is, he has pleasing eyes, or he has lotus leaf like, or lotus petal like eyes. When Sri Krishna is visualized as an object of meditation, his eyes are not fierce but pleasing. That is, his eyes shower grace and inspire peace in others. So there are multiple ways to interpret this. Upasya Brahmam and Upanishad Brahmam. So there are 2 different things. So Upanishad Brahman is like, the one that is attributeless, and we are only trying to understand what he is not and what his attributes are. So we can't even define, he doesn't have a form. Whereas in Upasya Brahman, where we are able to give him a form, or we are based on what rishis have perceived. We cannot give him any form and any shape. It is rishis who would have seen him in their meditation, and they have given us descriptions, and based on those descriptions we have, we perceive Bhagavan, or we meditate on Bhagavan in a particular with a name and a form. In that sense, this is being explained. I think we'll go to talk about lotuses a little more on what Ikshana means in the next class. I just noticed we are at 9:51. Sorry about that. So we'll conclude here, and we'll come back to 38th shloka next week. Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om. Sri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Sarvam Srimannarayana Charanaravindarpanamastu. Thank you so much for your time and the extra 7 minutes. We'll catch up later.
Thank you, Guruji.
Thank you, Shriji.
Guruji,